Good afternoon, I'm Chef Pressley here at the Lex2be Innovation Center, and today we're going to be making some biscuits. Not just any type of biscuits, but I like a really fluffy biscuit, a biscuit with a little extra butter. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So right now I have in front of me all of my mise en place. So mise en place pretty much means to have everything in place in the French term. So I have my flour, I have my sugar, I have my baking soda, and I have my butter and my milk along with the sheet that I'm going to bake it on and my bowl where I'm going to mix my dry ingredients. I already have my flour surface as well, so that's going to be there. So it's pretty much to have everything in place before we get started. So to get started, you definitely want to make sure that your butter, I already did this process, it's frozen to the touch. So you want to cut your butter up into small pieces for this recipe, and you want to make sure that it's frozen. So before you do anything, you want to add all of your dry ingredients together. So there's my flour, and I have my sugar, and then I have my baking soda. Now, I'm a very hands-on type person, so I know some people like to use a whisk, some people like to use spoons. I like to use my hands to get my dry ingredients mixed together. A nice pair of freshly washed hands. And we want to make sure you get your ingredients together. I feel like you understand your food a little bit more when you can feel what's going on with it. With the whisk, with the spoon, it does help with the evenness to spread your product evenly. However, when you have your hands, you can feel every little chunk or piece that's in there that's still lingering behind. So I think we have all of our dry ingredients mixed pretty well. Now I'm going to add my cold butter is what's next. The reason why we freeze the butter and make sure that the butter is cold as possible, because that is what creates the flakiness of the biscuit. So now that you have your butter inside, and yes, it is frozen, you want to make sure that you merge your butter and your dry ingredients together really well. It is frozen, so it will take a couple of minutes to get it where we need to, but after a while, you can begin to see the process of it coming together. With this particular recipe that I'm using, you will still see some butter particles once you cut your biscuits into the circular shape that you need before you bake it. So if the recipe is executed correctly, you will end up with a nice golden color brown biscuit that's also flaky, and you can see the flakes from the side. Now that I have that combined, where my flour is coating the butter, that's what we want. You want to add your 3/4 cup of milk. And once again, I love to use my hands. So you just want to fold your milk and your flour together. This shouldn't be a real terrible process. And once you get it all together, it should turn into a nice dough. Your flour will slowly start to disappear because it's turning into a dough. It's going to become more sticky, almost like wet sand. Your hands will get a little messy in this process, and that's totally fine. Because the more flour you add, the less sticky that it is because it starts to come together. And again, you still will see chunks of your butter. That is okay. That's going to really help when you go to bake your biscuit. And let's say if you're in your home environment, your biscuit is going to smell really, it's going to make your house smell really, good with that extra butter being entangled into your biscuit dough. So I've probably been mixing for about 30 seconds, probably about 60 seconds now, between 30 to 60 seconds. And you can see I have a nice biscuit dough going on already. It's still, yes, a little messy, but now what you want to do is turn this over. Make sure you have all of your major ingredients at the bottom of the bowl. And then you just want to turn it over into a flour surface. Now we're on a flour surface. You want to definitely get your hands, I like to get my hands inside the flour as well, to get the extra dough that's stuck to my hands back off into the original dough. So I told you flour is going to be that process that's going to help that. And as you can see, I have cleaner hands than before this time around. Add a little extra flour, and then you want to combine everything back together. And then now you just want to fold your dough. You can do this process between 7 to 8 times according to how flaky you want your dough. And if you look closely, you can still see some of our butter that's still inside of the dough. That is perfectly okay. You want to fold and fold and fold until it's an inch thick. Once you get an inch thickness, then you want to use your dough cutter, and it's okay to still have extra flour on your table. You want to then use your cookie cutter, your dough cutter, whatever you have, to make the shape of your biscuit. Alright, so now we have took our dough, we had it about an inch thickness, and then we took our cookie cutter. I like to use about a 3/4 inch cookie cutter, and I went ahead and cut out my perfectly sized biscuit. Some people like to use it by hand. With the recipe that I use, I like to use a cookie cutter so it keeps that butter nice and cold and intact. And as I mentioned before, it's okay to still see some butter chunks inside of your biscuit. That's what's going to make it bake really well and make the aroma even better. So we have our oven set to 425, and we're going to set our timer for 12 minutes. Okay, so when we let those bake for 12 minutes, I like to come back and check them at 6 minutes to see how they look, and then we'll come back and assess. Now that we have let our biscuits bake for a beautiful 12 minutes, you can now see that they bake to a beautiful brown goldish color, and I always love to add a little extra melted butter on top. Like, who doesn't like extra butter? So I always like to add just a little extra butter on top for color. It gives it a nice little shine, and it also gives it some more flavor. And there you have it. This is our really good flaky butter recipe. As you can see, the process we did with keeping that butter frozen allow it to be flaky, and you can see the inside of the biscuit from the side. The baking powder allowed it to rise at a nice height from where we started from. So the cookie cutter allowed us to be a nice biscuit. It's a very versatile biscuit, good for Thanksgiving on Thanksgiving morning with family. It's good for several different occasions. Even if you just like a brunch and you want to do some biscuits and gravy, you can do some gravy with this easy biscuit recipe. So this is one of the recipes that my Intro to Culinary Arts students do to kind of get them used to utilizing their hands. Most people nowadays, they really like to use a whisk or a spoon or use a mixer, and KitchenAid is very popular for that, so they make it easy for you. However, although those things are great, we still like to use our hands in the more traditional kitchen style so you can be more comfortable with your food. And that's what I have. So my Intro to Culinary Arts students will definitely be doing this recipe, and they should have a lot of fun doing this recipe as well.